special thanks to Mecha Japan for sponsoring today's video. Alright, hopefully by now we've all seen the first real teaser trailer for Core 4 of the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime, and while it was exciting and great to finally get something, it was definitely a teaser in the truest sense of the word. With only 15 seconds worth of actual new footage to comb through, I'm not expecting this video, where we take a deeper look at the trailer itself, to be that long, but who knows? The fun part is the speculation, the theories, the ideas that everyone comes up with. The trailer is ultimately just the catalyst for a wider discussion. So, as we do whenever we get a new trailer, today we'll be going over the footage frame by frame to see what secrets it might be holding, if any, but also to see what parts of the manga they're showing off in the trailer and how they're choosing to showcase it. Remember to let me know down in the comments your thoughts on the trailer, what little information we have on Core 4 so far, and how you feel about the direction of the Core, at least based on what we currently know. Also, if I missed anything, please do let me know down in the comments. And before we get started, there will of course be spoilers for the upcoming Thousand Year Blood War arc anime in the video to come. Remember as well, if you enjoyed today's video, to consider hitting subscribe if you're new, or if you simply haven't done that yet. It's quick and easy to do, and it does help the channel out enormously. And speaking of which, also check out my other channel, Mr. Tomo Talks Games as well, where your support over there is greatly appreciated. And now, before we dive into the trailer analysis, first a word from today's sponsor. Christmas is here, the newest trailer for the final season of the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime has been revealed, and Mecha Japan has a ton of brand new Bleach merch in stock. It's a great time to be a Bleach fan, and by visiting the link and using my discount code, you can grab yourself or someone you love a last-minute Bleach gift and help to support the channel in a big way at the same time. Mecha Japan is an online store that sells products from major Japanese licenses such as Nintendo, Capcom, Sega, and of course, Shonen Jump. With a catalogue of more than 40,000 high-quality products straight from Japan, you can be sure to find what you're looking for, like perhaps these new pin badges featuring Bleach characters teaming up with iconic Sanrio mascots. Seriously though, Mecha Japan has a ton of awesome Bleach merch available: posters, plush keychains, Union Arena Bleach trading cards, and of course, some incredible figures too. I particularly like this figure of Uryu in his Volston dish, and it makes me wonder what new designs and forms Core 4 might bring that will later be brought to life like this too. But hey, if you're feeling festive instead, Mecha Japan has an entire section on its website dedicated to Christmas-themed merch. So if you're interested in picking something up, maybe some very rare items that are even listed as such on the website, then make sure to visit the site using my link in the description or the pinned comment down below, and to use my discount code AIZ2025, that's AIZ2025, to get $10 off of orders greater than $100. Let me know down in the comments what you decide to pick up. Thanks everyone, Merry Christmas, and thanks again to Mecha Japan for sponsoring today's video. So, while like I said, there are only 15 precious seconds of new footage at the end of the trailer, I do also want to take a very quick look at anything of note that happens beforehand as well, as the rest of the trailer is interesting in its own right. For example, as the trailer opens and the title of Bleach Thousand Year Blood War appears on the screen, a footprint materializes in the sand, in the very center of the text. While this appears pretty innocuous at first glance, and may simply be the start of the trail of footprints as they make their way across the Bleach landscape, mapping out the story so far, this particular footprint, the first one we see, is an allusion to the very final chapter of Bleach, where on the last page of the manga, a similar footprint is seen as Kubo signed off Bleach for the last time, dedicating it to the stories of Brave. This doesn't mean too much in the grand scheme of things, save for one little point. We really have reached the end. As for how it fits into this particular trailer, well, at least to me, it definitely seems to symbolise the journey our Ryoka heroes have been on, as they ventured through Karakura Town, the Soul Society, Waco Mundo, and eventually the Vandenreich, all the way to the final battle in Varveld, to show us just how far everyone has come, and indeed how they have left their mark on the world in their wake, thereby culminating in the complete stories of Brave. In that sense, this trail of footprints could in fact be leading to this very final one, as we see in chapter 686. We just don't know it yet. I've seen some theories that these footprints are in fact the Soul King making his way across the land, or observing what's been happening so far. And while I like that idea, and believe me, I want more from Rayo in this core, I don't personally think that's what this is meant to be representative of. For one thing, once the world was split into these different lands, as far as we know, the Soul King wasn't doing much walking anymore. So at least from a literal sense, that doesn't seem possible. Figuratively though, sure, it could be the case. Next up, there's a shot of various different shoes leaving prints on the ground in a cluster, which looks like a reference to the first Bleach anime opening Asterisk by Orange Range, which features a similar shot of different people running about, leaving a mess of footprints made of paint on the floor. And if this is a reference, that would also make sense, thematically at least, as this is likely to now be the true end of the Bleach anime, something that's been in the works for many years now at this point, something people waited for over a decade for, and so that brings us full circle. Unless we get more beyond this in the future, of course. I will say, I do particularly like the shot of the footprints walking across the sand dunes of Waco Mundo. It's a great shot. Now, considering Kubo tends to depict Ichigo as the moon, as per his bankai being the black moon rising and whatnot, I think the shots of the ever-encroaching darkness eventually eclipsing the moon is meant to represent Yhwach overpowering and finally defeating Ichigo using the Almighty and the power of the Soul King, which is just a black mass essentially, as we know happens in this core. And this also lines up, I think, with the next shot of the trailer, which sees one of Yhwach's many eyes opening upon the black canvas, almost like a moon against the night sky, which, by the way, looks very similar to the shot from chapter 684, where Ichigo finally kills the Quincy King, cutting the moon in two. The screen is then filled with countless eyes, which of course represent the power of the Almighty, but also represent Yhwach's own explanation of how the Almighty works, that he sees the many futures laid out before him as countless possibilities, as tiny and numerous as grains of sand. But at this point, the trailer at last transitions to the actual footage of Core 4, so let's take a look. The trailer opens with a shot of Ichigo, Orihime, and Chad running up a flight of stairs as they continue to make their way to Yhwach's throne room at the very top of Varvelt. Now, while this shot of the three of them running is a totally new shot, it's also a direct continuation of where we left them at the end of Core 3, implying that, some kind of flashback aside, in terms of the narrative, we are going to be picking up immediately where we left off in the previous core, which, based on the chapters we left on, that makes sense. This shot of them running up the stairs is an adaptation of the title page from chapter 661, just as it was in episode 40. Up next, though, we have an interesting shot of Orihime conjuring Santen Keshun, and this could potentially be from two different scenarios. First of all, and this is the least likely option in my opinion, this shot could be from her battle against Yhwach after Ichigo has destroyed the throne room, allowing Varvelt's normal colour to flood in. While this is definitely possible, as I said, I also don't think it's too likely, for a few reasons, including one that we'll talk about right at the end of this video, based on what we can kind of glean from those scant few shots of Ichigo wielding his Horn of Salvation form, and how the lighting doesn't seem to change. But we'll get to that in a minute. Instead, the likelier option, in my opinion, is that this shot of Orihime is from an extended battle sequence against the Quincy statues, and the first episode of the core. Orihime never conjures Santen Keshun against the statues in the manga, so if it is being used against them, this is a new scene, and I'm willing to bet it is, for a few reasons. First of all, like I said, the lighting. As I said, it is possible that this is after Ichigo has destroyed the throne room, but, well, again, we'll get there in a minute, but the lighting doesn't actually seem to change. And, combined with my next reason, I think it has to be the statues, and that's the camera angle. Orihime is clearly aiming her shield above her here, with the camera looking down upon her, so she's defending herself and her friends from an enemy that's attacking from above. and the likeliest option in my opinion is that she's conjuring a shield against one of the gigantic statues who's bringing their weapon down upon Orihime. Like I said, this doesn't happen in the manga. In the manga, Ichigo rescues Orihime at the last minute before she's crushed, and then Chad swoops in to protect Ichigo from another statue, at which point the gang is separated. Not only that, but we have to consider the chronology of the teaser itself. The teaser trailer doesn't seem to show anything in the story past the few initial moments after Ichigo's transformation into his Horn of Salvation form. And this Orihime shot leads directly into a much more familiar image. Chad and Ganju squaring off against the Quincy statues, taken straight from the cliffhanger of chapter 661, which was the final chapter technically adapted in episode 40, although it did go further than that with the arrival of Isshin and Ryuken. So anyway, this leads me to believe that this Orihime shot is from the same battle. And anyway, moving on, speaking of the Chad and Ganju shot, well, it's happening. I know many of us wondered if the Quincy statues might be cut altogether to give Chad and Ganju something else to do, but nope, so far, for Chad and Ganju, it is playing out exactly as it did in the manga. And that's, I would say, bad news for Chad and Ganju fans, because this is the last time these characters ever show up in the arc, at least until Chad's brief cameo in the epilogue. But for now, he and Ganju are left to fight a bunch of statues off-screen. And yeah, so far that does look to be the same. The shot of the two of them from the back is them preparing for the battle from the manga, with Chad saying they need to clear a path for Ichigo's return. It's totally possible Chad gets a little bit extra to do prior to this moment if the Orihime shot really is from an extension of the battle against the statues, but either way it's not great. However, the following shot in the trailer is maybe a little more promising, the one of Chad and Ganju from the front, which is totally new, as Chad has both arms active, which means it is after the chapter 661 cliffhanger. So maybe we'll get an extension of Chad's actual fight with the statues, but, well, does anyone really want that for this character? And also, it could just be that Ganju, as we can kind of see him talking here, is just being given an additional line before the scene then cuts away, which I think is probably the most likely option. But also, I've maintained for a while now that it would be awesome if those strange Soldat, made up purely of Yhwach Soul King power, that were an anime-only addition in the previous Cour, were foreshadowing the return of some deceased Sternritter for characters like Chad to fight in Varvelt, and I'm still hoping that happens, but again, for now, we'll have to wait and see. However, the next shot is very exciting indeed. This is a brand new shot of Uryu using his Volsten dish, and the fully powered version at that, as he conjures his fleet of arrowheads to attack, presumably Hashwolf. And this trailer absolutely teases a potentially greatly expanded battle between the two top Quincies, which is one of the new additions that I wanted the absolute most, having made an entire video on how the anime could fix this fight, which was a massive disappointment in the manga. The lighting is lovely in this shot, by the way, and I think it's awesome how the entire arena seems to be glowing blue, but more on that later. However, we can see that Uryu is already quite injured, having taken what appears to be a stab wound in his shoulder and a slash across his chest. There's also a fun little error in this shot too. Uryu's waist appears to be duplicated here, which will obviously be cleaned up prior to the official release. But yeah, I love this shot and I think it looks really nice. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this is early in the Cour, and we keep checking in on Uryu and Hashwolf throughout the entire season. Next up is a powerful shot of a very pink Yhwach giving off a massive toothy grin. Now this could honestly be a few different things, however, the most likely reference point, in my opinion, is this shot from chapter 672, where Yhwach wakes up after believing he's had a dream that shows Ichigo killing him with a blade that looks like the original false version of Zangetsu Shikai. And the only reason I think this is because it fits with the trailer chronology, and also Kubo really emphasized Yuha Bark's teeth here, and so I think the anime is doing the same. Interestingly, immediately after this moment in the manga is when we return to Uryu versus Hashwolf for the very first time in over 10 chapters, and Uryu's definitely looking worse for wear in the manga than he is in the anime at presumably this similar point in time. Moving on though, we have the absolute cream of the crop of this trailer as far as I'm concerned. The next few shots are all completely brand new, and yes, they belong to Uryu vs. Hashwolf, with a much needed extension to their fight being teased right here. This is where there's the most to unpack, so let's take a look. Now, I actually think these next few shots all play out sequentially. Initially, we have this fantastic shot of Hashwolf as he kind of stares down at Uryu, having managed to overpower his enemy even though Uryu is using Volstendish. Now, it's key to note here that Hashwolf still has the Almighty. Again, this is completely new. Even though Hashwolf starts out his fight with Uryu using the Almighty in the manga, as we saw at the end of Cour 3, the next time we see them in the manga, 672, he's already lost that power. So we never actually see Hashwolf fighting Uryu with the Almighty active, we only see the aftermath, which is Uryu pretty beaten up. And here in the anime, this is likely how Hashwolf has managed to get one over him. So next, Hashwolf kneels down atop Uryu with his blade pointed at Uryu's eye. And this is again fascinating because we get this cool sweeping motion with the camera, and we can tell they're not in the same arena they were when we left them in episode 40. Uryu has somehow ended up on what looks like a rafter or something, but what's most interesting about this, and what I think is giving the room its strange blue glow that I mentioned earlier, isn't just Uryu's Volstendish, but there seems to be what kind of looks like a pool of blue fire or something underneath them. I was wondering if it was maybe ice at first, as obviously the whole place is covered in ice, which kind of seems to glow in the light, but the camera continues to pan round and you can still see it underneath the two of them, almost like they are fighting above a pool of blue lava or something. In another really cool, totally new shot, Hashwolf's blade is pushing against Uryu's glasses, but then suddenly, something weird happens. We see a strange dark sludge pour out of Hashwolf's eye and run down his face. Now interestingly, the sludge seems to be actively avoiding his irises, which would imply that it's coming out of his irises, and also his eyes are no longer red. Instead, they've returned to their normal blue colour, which again we saw happen maybe once, or was it twice in the anime? In Cour 3, one such example was during their confrontation at the very end of the Cour, when Uryu coaxed Hashwolf into getting angry. His eyes flashed as though he was losing control of the Almighty. And that's exactly what I think is happening here. Yuha Bark is waking up, so Hashwolf is losing the Almighty again, and his power is returning to the king. In the same way we saw in Cour 2 when Hashwolf emerged from the shadow, when Yuha Bark fell asleep, that same darkness is now returning to Yuha Bark. So what I think is happening is Hashwolf, using the Almighty, manages to overpower and pin Uryu to that pillar. But then he loses the Almighty, and in that moment Uryu is able to overpower him and escape, leading to that earlier shot of a wounded Uryu preparing to unleash his arrows. And I'm assuming that Uryu is going to take the fight to the next level and capitalise on the fact that Hashwolf no longer has the Almighty. And if I'm honest, I think the anime is going to make a slight change here, and show that without the Almighty, Hashwolf isn't quite as capable of totally dominating Uryu as he was in the manga. I'm expecting the fight to be a little more even once the Almighty disappears. And I can't help but wonder as well, if Hashwolf is trying to stab Uryu's eye, because in that moment he's talking about Uryu's eyes, specifically the fact that they turned red after he killed Senjumaru, and that Hashwolf is maybe concerned about Uryu having a connection to the Almighty or taking the Almighty for himself. Again, that's total speculation, but that storyline has to be leading somewhere. Anyway, moving on, next up we find ourselves at Ichigo and Orihime versus Yhwach. Continuing the theme of close-up eye shots, this image of Ichigo looking completely enraged comes straight from chapter 673, as he clashes with Yhwach for the first time in their latest battle. But more on that in a moment. The trailer jumps around this same chapter quite a lot, taking us back now to earlier in the chapter next, as we see Ichigo and Orihime standing side by side as they advance on Yhwach into the throne room. This first shot of the two of them from further away is from chapter 673 as well, when they first enter Yhwach's throne room. However, the next shot, that's a little closer to the two of them, I think this particular shot is new, and it seems to depict, at least based on the lighting, the two of them approaching Yhwach, whereas in the manga, we only really saw Ichigo do this once he actually entered the throne room, but here, Orihime looks to be getting ready to fight. Next up though, we return to chapter 673 once again with an awesome shot of Yhwach. This shot leads directly into the shot of Ichigo's enraged eyes from earlier, as here the Quincy King tells Ichigo that Masaki died because it was her time. She gave birth to Ichigo, and she died to feed Yhwach's powers, and as a result the Quincy King exclaims that Masaki couldn't have possibly hoped for greater happiness, which is this shot here taken straight from the manga, and it's him saying this that leads to Ichigo's eyes looking like that. Our next shot takes us backwards in the chapter once more, as Ichigo rushes Yhwach with a golden Getsuga streaming from his blade, and it looks absolutely fantastic here in the anime, by the way, with some really wonderful colours. In the manga, Ichigo roars that Yhwach isn't his father, and in fact killed one of his parents. Yhwach laughs that Ichigo must be more of a man than that, to which Ichigo charges at him with the Getsuga Tensho, which is this shot in the anime. We then jump forward in the trailer to chapter 675, as Ichigo's longer Zangetsu blade begins to turn white. It's a really cool looking effect here in the anime. It's almost as if the Quincy Reiatsu is burning away the black outer layer of the sword. It actually kind of reminds me a little of the way Yamamoto's bankai disengaged in episode 7. Then up next we have a quick combination of two moments. The first shot of Ichigo's Horn of Salvation form, where he's standing with his back to the camera, is actually the first panel of chapter 676, only 10 chapters away from the end of the series, whereas the shot after that, which shows us the Horn of Salvation in all its glory, is of course the famous cliffhanger from chapter 675. And this takes us to our final shot, a really nicely animated moment, where Ichigo, having transformed, brings his sword down upon Yhwach, ending the trailer. It's fast, it's fluid, and it looks great, and yes, it is taken straight from the manga. In chapter 676, Ichigo blitzes Yhwach, and as the Quincy King draws his blue reishi sword, Ichigo grabs Yhwach's hand to force his sword back down, before bringing his own blade down upon the enemy. It's a great moment, and it looks awesome here too. Now there are a couple of interesting details to pick up on before we close out this video. Although it only lasts a split second, you can see the blue glow of Yhwach's reishi sword as Ichigo pushes it back here, and Ichigo's armor is damaged in the exact same way it is in the manga. And now for a couple of additional smaller points, things that may still be changed in the anime. I mentioned earlier about that Orihime shot likely not being from this fight, due to the way the lighting looked, and that's because this final shot of Ichigo bringing his sword down upon Yhwach happens after Ichigo destroys the throne room with his Reiatsu in the manga, yet the lighting still appears to be the same here in the anime. If we pause the animation quickly, we can see what looks like a huge hole in the roof above Ichigo here. So maybe the entire throne room won't be obliterated quite so easily in the anime. Or it'll all blow up once Ichigo actually connects his blade, which would be cool. The very last thing to point out is actually an error, and it's a fairly significant one at that, and one that will almost certainly be fixed by the time of release. But we can see during this slashing motion that Ichigo's blade has gone back to being black here, as opposed to the newly white that it's supposed to be in this form. Anyway, as the date arrives, we get our first piece of actual new dialogue in the trailer as Yhwach tells Ichigo to prepare to fight, which comes from the cliffhanger of chapter 673. Which, by the way, I can't wait to see how they bring this particular look of Yhwach's to life here in the anime. But that's it for the trailer. I guess the only interesting part regarding the cast list at the end is that Kyoraku's voice actor is listed, despite him only having a few lines of dialogue in the epilogue at this point in the manga, unless that's hinting at Kyoraku having more of a role than he had previously in the manga here. Alright everyone, but that's it for today's video. As always, I do hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you took something of value away from it as well. Let me know your thoughts on the trailer down in the comments below, on the secrets and the shots that we picked out and analysed. I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well. Was there anything that I missed that you picked up on this trailer? Do please let me know. And was there anything here that you didn't notice the first time round and has changed the way you think about what's going to go down? Maybe the Uryu versus Hashwolf battle, the extended scene against the statues. No matter what, I'd love to get your thoughts, so do please let me know. Alright, but that's it from me now until Christmas, so thank you all so very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful and safe Christmas if you celebrate it. If not, I hope you have a wonderful and safe time anyway, but I hope you get some awesome Bleach gifts for Christmas too. Do let me know down in the comments what you got. Check out Mecha Japan, use my code as it really does help support the channel directly. If you want to do that, that would make a wonderful Christmas present for me as well. But regardless, like I said, I hope you all have a wonderful time and a very Merry Christmas. Alright everyone, until next time, thank you so very much for watching once again. Consider hitting subscribe if you haven't done already. Check out my other channel, Mr. Tomo Talks Games. And as always, a massive thank you and a huge shout out goes out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon, without who I simply wouldn't be able to keep doing this. And you are really helping out so very much. So thank you all once again. It does mean absolutely everything. But yeah, that's all from me again. Have a wonderful Christmas. I'll see you on the other side. And until then, I'll catch you later. And I'll see you then.